Welcome to The Reins of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you lead with presence and influence with trust. I'm your host, Marinda Smith, business leadership strategist, sharing actionable insights on mindset, EQ, and energy uniquely illuminated by wisdom gained alongside my equine partners. In this recording with Amanda, I really loved it because we were just chatting about the exciting things that she's doing in her program and with her equines, and it aligns so beautifully with my podcast and talking about leadership. So I really enjoyed chatting to her, and I hope you do as well. Here we go. I am so excited to welcome Amanda Held to my podcast. I've been following Amanda for a few months now, and when she appeared in my socials, I was so excited to connect with her. Now, she speaks my language, and I'm going to let Amanda introduce herself. I'd just like to say, Amanda, welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Marinda, and thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored to be here. I think we connected through a mutual friend. So I too have been following your Facebook for a couple of months, and I really resonate with everything. So it's truly an honor to be here. I am in Ohio, so America, in Northwest Ohio, a small town called Swanton. And I actually grew up here, but I left when I was 18 and I joined active duty, the Air Force. And I did 4 years on active duty and I had a really great career. So, unlike a lot of people, I didn't struggle with my time in the military, but I did end up getting out and I decided to stay home with my two kids. Daycare was going to be more than my paycheck. I didn't do well with just staying home. And so I
I
started
know
to
that feeling.
struggle. Yeah. Some people it's we call it the blueprint, your human blueprint. And for some people it's definitely in their blueprint. And I love my kids and I love being a mom and now a grandmom, but it just there was a gap
Mm.
and I fell into a deep depression. And I had grown up with horses and gotten out of them to join the Air Force. And I found myself back at a horse stable on the Air Force Academy out in Colorado, where they
Oh,
had a lot of wild horses. And the people there, I would go and visit and kind of just sit on the fence post. And finally, somebody started talking to me. And I said, I have a background in horses. And they said, well, you should get a wild Mustang. And I was like, what? Like,
yeah.
I showed pleasure in 4-H and I ran some barrels. Like, I'm not a horse trainer. But what young girl doesn't desire to gentle a wild Mustang? So,
Mm.
long story short, I went to a rescue and I went into a pasture with about 50 baby wild Mustangs, and one of them picked me. They all ran except for one.
Mm.
And this mare, her name is Shelby. I still have her today. She's 24 years old.
Wow.
And she picked me, and that really changed the trajectory of my life and helped me become who I am today. So today, I'm the founder of an organization called HOOVES, which stands for Healing of Our Veterans Equine Services. And we provide 5-day healing intensives for veterans from all over the world at our farm and our sanctuary in Northwest Ohio. And I'm also the creator of the Equine Wisdom Institute. So, in my time learning from Shelby and now the many other Mustangs that I've rescued over the years, I've really connected to the language of the horse, not just a biological or behavior perspective, but also an energetic perspective.
Mm.
And they've really led me on the path. And I did end up getting back into the military. So I'm still serving today in the Air National Guard as a senior master sergeant. So I'm actually, it's been a great job I got a couple of years ago as a human resources, but I've been able to bring some of the stuff I do in my veterans organization into the military. So that's been really exciting as well.
Wow, that is super exciting. I want to delve a bit deeper into that Hooves experience and training people from all over the world. And what are the patterns? Just share some of the patterns that you're seeing show up, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the biggest thing that I see, and I'm going to speak specifically to the veterans that show up here, but I believe that I see this in most people that I meet anyway. So hopefully everyone can resonate. But by the time somebody has shown up here, they've pretty much lost hope.
Mm.
And I like to say we're not who we were before we joined the military. And we're not who we were while we were in the military. And if you don't know who you are, then everybody that loves you is happy to tell you who you should be.
Mm.
And I think that is a systemic problem in many, many people, not just our veterans, but we do serve veterans at no cost through our healing intensive. So that's who I'm dealing with. But some of them come here and they are on disability, they're unable to work, and they've really gone down a bad path, maybe drugs and alcohol, maybe suicide attempts, depression, things like that. And some of the veterans that come here are functioning. And maybe they're an entrepreneur. Sometimes they're executives.
Mm. So on the
They get
outside, they look okay.
absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes people come here. We had a guy in particular named Mike, and he came last August. I have permission to share his story, and actually, he just did an interview for us. That's fabulous. Maybe I can link it to you. But he came, he's an executive, he's a director of safety for a big steel company. And he only came through because one of his employees, who was also a Marine, they're both Marines, was struggling, and Marines stick together.
Yeah.
They have each other's back. And so he showed up kind of thinking it was a bunch of bullshit. And even, when he got here, he wasn't convinced. He wasn't necessarily interested in horses. He really just wanted to support his buddy. And he had such a profound transformation. And he talks about it in his interview, how he went back to work and he used to show up a certain way as an executive. And sometimes people were afraid to bring him into rooms because he was very
Volatile.
attached to his beliefs and didn't
Mm.
like being questioned. And he said that he got back from our intensive and an inspector came to inspect his programs and everyone was on pins and needles.
Wow.
And he was actually, instead of getting defensive, he was able to take feedback.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
everyone around him was like, "Who are you? Who have you become?" So he actually just came through again in May. So when the veterans come through, if they stick with the program and do the work, they get invited back as mentors.
Brilliant. So it's a 5-day intensive.
It is a 5-day intensive, and it's interesting because I know there's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of equine programs out there. There's a lot of leadership programs
Mm.
out there. And for some reason, people just continually are saying, yes, but this is unique. This isn't like other programs.
Yeah,
And
brilliant.
I've been curious because I'm like, well, what really makes it different? Because, if you look at our curriculum, we do a mindfulness practice in the morning. We meditate with the horses, yoga, breath work, all the things.
Mm.
We then go into the classroom for about 4 hours
So
and
learning theory.
are learning theory. And then after lunch, we go out with the horses. And then in the evening, we'll do some type of creative activity. So we used to call them retreats, and we had to stop calling them retreats because we were giving people the wrong idea.
Yeah, that
Because
they were going to relax, but they actually don't because they're totally pulling themselves apart and getting totally discombobulated and then bringing all those parts back together again. I can imagine that's what you have
absolutely.
developed. Mm.
You are spot on. And, I've been saying for a couple of years now that I would love to be able to offer this to a group of like CEOs or high-powered leaders just because I know what it does for our veterans. And
Mm.
I just know I would love to offer it and I would love to see how life-changing it was. And I would also love to see like the feedback that people might have about it because the veterans come and they're like, I've tried everything else. I've tried,
Mm.
talk therapy. I've tried ayahuasca. I've tried psychedelics. I've tried everything and adventure therapy. And so, for some reason, this just seems to be the thing that continues to work. And it's not just one or two, it's hundreds.
For our listeners out there, Amanda, can you take us through what a session in the field or paddock looks like, and what sort of things are coming back from the horses? So maybe starting at, how do you set it up? What is a typical session, how you set it up, and then, what happens? Because I know from my experience, whatever you do is never what happens.
No, it's not. So one of our signature sessions, and I'll say, so I have developed my own model of facilitation. And sidebar, really quick, because it's important. But about 6 years ago, I had a really prophetic experience with a horse where I realized it was actually trying to communicate with me specifically and not just, through nonverbal communication. And from this moment, I actually developed a set of, I call them the equine communication charts.
Mm,
And I've discovered that horses are actually picking up on patterns where we have blocked energy, but it's continuing to go deeper. Like it's in the quantum level at this point. But so I have these charts, and the horses will do different movements with their body, or they'll touch my clients on different parts of their body, and it all has a spiritual meaning. And I've developed a facilitative question
mm,
to go with it. So, like for instance, if we go out in the field with the horses, and that will start, that's the first experience they have Wednesday morning. They come in Tuesday evening, is we go out and we meditate with the horses, and then the horses will come in and the horses will start giving them feedback immediately. And I try to like ease them into the concept that a horse is actually knowing everything about them and trying to have a conversation with them.
mm.
And I know at the end it's funny because people will often tell me how crazy they think I am the first 2 days. And by day three, it's like, Amanda, the horse touched my arm. What's it asking me? So we
Mm,
use parts to facilitate. So like if the horse would come up to your arm, like we'll say your left arm, that's where we hold our self-value. So the question could be something like, where are you devaluing yourself? And then
mm,
if it's on the left arm, it would be within your family or your social circle or physically. And if it was your right arm, it would be where you devaluing yourself mentally, at your work or financially. And what's so interesting is I did a session with a news reporter. She came out to just see, and we went into the field, and May, one of our Shire draft horses, came up, and I said, well, May's trying to talk to you. Are you open to doing a session during our news interview? And she was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And so May did the arm, and it was her right arm. And so the question was, where are you devaluing yourself in regards to your career? And she lost it. She had to like say, stop filming, walk away, cry, come back. And she was like, that's so powerful. Like that horse absolutely knew, I've had some stuff on my mind. And she ended up going back and changing her career after that. Like just that 5 minutes in the pen with the horse was enough to change the trajectory of her life.
yeah.
So so we have several different exercises that we do, but my favorite exercise is we call it the 7 areas of life. So we have spiritual, mental, vocational, financial, social, physical, and family. And we set up hula hoops in the arena, and we have all these props. And we take the veterans out into the pasture, and they have to be chosen by the horse. So they don't get to pick. They come and stand, and then whatever horse has a message for them will come to them, and then we'll take that horse into the arena. And what they'll do is they'll put different props in all 7 areas of life, and then they'll get their horse and they'll walk their horse to each of the areas, and they have a partner, and the partner will annotate what the horse is doing in each of those areas. And sometimes people are checked out of their life or they're avoidant of their life, and the horses won't go into their area of life at all. So we get this really, really fast, deep, and profound feedback. And I always tell everybody my favorite story is that my horse Ellie, who was actually born at my farm. She's 14 years now. Her mom is Shelby, the one that I
Mhm.
got in Colorado. She predicted my daughter getting pregnant with my grandson. So her husband came through the healing intensive. He's an Army veteran. And when we did this exercise, he had actually taken a toy baby and put it in the family area. And when he walked around, she picked that baby up with her teeth and was waving it in front of his face. And a couple months later, my daughter found out she was pregnant. So
Wow.
like when I say it out loud, it still feels crazy. But I can tell you in the 6 years that I've been facilitating with these charts, they've never been wrong. And I'm still a healthy skeptic. I'm still trying to disprove them in every session. It just hasn't happened yet. But they pick up on each of the areas of life. They give us very clear feedback on how we're approaching that area of life. And so we have everybody write that down, and then we go in later to the classroom and I give everybody the feedback and they get to journal and sit with that. So it's, uh, you have to come with an open mind. Or, well, I don't know. Sometimes people don't come
They
with an open
don't.
mind,
Yeah,
but
like
they leave
mine.
with an open mind.
Mm,
I encourage people to have an open mind, and I encourage people to but when the horses are so spot on, like you can't deny it.
mm.
I had this female veteran and she was like, I feel like this horse is just putting all my business out to this entire group of people because
Wow.
it's so specific.
Mm.
So that's how we work with the horses here. So I guess maybe that's what makes the program unique.
It is very unique in the equine assisted learning field that I've trained in, and I watch other facilitators around the world. So, and I love it, absolutely love it. And so I'm interested actually, as you were talking about failure, and what is something that could be considered a failure, but it was one of your biggest learning?
Oh man.
Sorry for
Let's
throwing
see.
it at you.
I Where do I begin? I've failed at so many things. Well, I like to believe, and this is something that we teach in the program, about free will and predestination. Okay. And so when I look at failure, I look at if I'm quote unquote failing at something, it means one of two things. I'm getting feedback that I'm on the wrong path,
Mm,
and it's kind of warning me to say, hey, this isn't for you. Or it's giving me a challenge to overcome because I'm going to need that skill set in the future.
beautiful. I love that. Talk more about that challenge to overcome, please.
Let's see. Well, here's well, I don't know if it's a failure. I guess and the listeners can decide. But when we got our sanctuary, we were at another farm. And there is a local hospital that has a lot of money, and their philanthropy department reached out, and we started negotiating. And I was at this farm that was really challenging to be at. We didn't own it. There was a bunch of kids running around. It wasn't a safe environment. And I had kind of like just said a prayer, like, okay, God, I'm trying to do your work. Like, can you help me out here? So a couple days later, I get a phone call from this lady who says, I have this 30-acre farm. And I had like in my prayer, I was like, I want 30 acres on the park with a natural water source running through it. Like, I don't even know why I said that, but so she calls and she's like, oh, I have this 30-acre farm and my husband passed away. I love what you're doing. I'd love to offer it to you to purchase before I list it. So I went and looked. And we had been talking to this hospital, and I did not have the money. It was so far out of my budget. Like, it was unbelievable. And so, but because we had the backing, this hospital was like, yeah, we're going to give you $1 million, 350 a year for 3 years. And they came to our board meeting and we're like, okay, you're good, right? Like, we're good. And we signed like a statement of understanding, but we didn't sign the contract. So I wrote a land contract to this lady, sharing with her that we were going to get this money. So she accepted it. And we moved in October. And 2 days before Christmas, I got called into a meeting with the hospital, and they said, "I'm sorry, we can't give you the money. We can't give you anything." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm such an idiot. Like, how did I just make this knee-jerk reaction and move, we couldn't go back to our old farm because the lady wasn't very happy that we left. And I had 15 horses, and there was nowhere I was going to be able to board them for an
Mm.
affordable amount of money. So I learned a lot. And so that year, and my husband and I had just been able to quit our jobs and go full time into the nonprofit. So we did not have jobs, and we decided to forego our salary for a year. So we didn't take a paycheck so that we could pay the payment here, the rent payment here at the sanctuary. And I had to get really uncomfortable. I did a press release and I went on the news and I asked for support. I
Mm.
was having to raise $100,000 balloon payment every year. So I got really good at fundraising. I got really humble. We were able to raise $115,000 in 3 weeks and 2 days. And I had to walk in unwavering faith
Mm.
that this was happening for me and not to me. And there were so many things that I learned from that challenge. And we did end up being able to get a mortgage on the farm. And I actually raised myself the $1 million in the 3 year time frame. So I guess what could have been seen, and some people were like, "What's wrong with you? Like, how could you move into a contract
Mm.
like this without,"
And
and
could make it a failure. Some people were seeing it as a failure, yes.
yeah, they were
Yeah,
seeing me as irresponsible,
yeah,
which I understand. I mean, we did have a memorandum signed and I did meet with an attorney at the time just to see what my options were. And they were like, yeah, you have a case. Ohio is a verbal agreement state. You have a memorandum of understanding, but this is a conglomerate and they'll just hold you up in court and bleed you dry and you'll never be
yeah.
able to complete your mission and you'll so I knew like after I peeled myself off the floor, I
Yes.
knew I knew there was a purpose behind it
Mm.
and I would never ever change it now. I'm so thankful that it happened and it was actually interesting. I had a fundraising meeting 2 days ago and a lady who's now a director of community outreach for a big organization, she was at the hospital at the time that all of this happened.
Mhm.
And she came up to me after the meeting and she was like, I asked her what she had done before and she was like, I didn't want to tell you because, and I said to her, I said, listen, I'm so thankful that happened. I don't have an ounce of hard feelings.
Yeah.
It all worked out how it should. So it
And
also helped me.
yeah, yeah, I'm hearing that it has helped you. You've learned skills that you didn't, you may have had, but you didn't want to use in the past, and you've brought them. And now I'm listening to you, and I can just feel that you've just stepped up so much in your whole journey, your life journey. Do you feel that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like if my nervous system could handle that, I feel like there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot.
Mm,
There's not a whole lot these days that shakes me. I just
mm,
really and I appreciate I've worked so hard to build everything. Like there were no handouts. And there were times that I felt bitter about that because I know other people were getting handouts.
yeah.
And now being where I am and knowing that I built it all myself with the help of these horses,
Mm.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Beautiful. Thank you for being so open and sharing that. Really, it was beautiful to hear. So energetic leadership, energy, and tell me what that means for you. The use of energy, energetic leadership. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think of leadership starting in also goes along with my military career
Okay.
as well, right? Because in the military, there are phenomenal leaders and there are horribly toxic leaders. And um, it's an energy as well,
Yeah.
too, right? So I think from my perspective, it really starts with our ability to lead ourselves,
Mm.
right? And lead by example. And so I like to look at true leadership as like self-agency.
Mm.
So when we are clear on who we are and we live in alignment to who that is with, you know, I don't want to say necessarily pride, but acceptance
Mm.
and humility, then that is the highest vibration that you can vibrate at, right? Authenticity is like 400,000 times higher vibration than love, they've found recently. So, what I like to say is it's also about congruency. If I tell you who I am and then I show you who I am, and that lines up, you're going to trust me.
Mm.
But if I tell you who I am and then you watch my behavior and it doesn't line up, you aren't going to trust me.
Absolutely.
If I'm denying who I am or I'm incongruent inside, and I always say it creates a pressure. So when we're hiding who we are or we're not accepting who we are, it creates this pressure inside of us. And people can feel that. You can
Mm.
feel when somebody is not congruent. And the horses can feel it times 100, right? And so I don't necessarily see leadership as a certain thing that we do or say or a behavior. It's more of because we need different types of leaders and different people need to be led by different types of people. And so, our core lesson that we teach at Hooves that I've developed is called Discovering Your Human Blueprint.
Nice.
And so our blueprint is made up of a lot of different things, our dominant traits and characteristics, our natural gifts and talents, our internal driving force, our intrinsic values. And when we are living in our blueprint, we are our genius ignites and we become inspired leaders and people we become magnetic and people gravitate to us. But if we become leaders within our area of blueprint, we're going to attract people that want to be led that way. But there's always going to be people that don't like our style, right?
Mm.
That's what differences make the world go round. And I watch a lot of leaders watch other leaders and feel like, oh, everybody likes that guy. So I need to be like that guy. But if that's not congruent,
Mm.
and I'm trying to be like that guy, I've just created a pressure inside of myself and everybody can feel it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when people are in power, and this happens a lot in the military, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a specific rank, everybody has to obey you. Like there's no choice in that, right? And so I watch people who are congruent, who are servant leaders, and I watch how natural people want to follow them. And then I see what happens when the opposite is true.
Yeah. I know in the pony paddock, the leadership style can be so many different ways. And, from the horses, you can have the dominant mare that is biting and kicking, or you can have that quiet horse that just gently shares their leadership. And it's often a gelding, I've noticed, and just in that very quiet way. And everyone just loves him. And he will just go along and do whatever he does, and others follow. And I just think I love watching the horses and the equines, the donkeys as well, in their paddock. And I've got this one gelding the donkeys love him. They all follow him. It's just so gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. Um,
Love that.
I'm thinking about the current workplace environment and the leaders that I come up with on a regular basis who are and it's across the world, it's not just in Australia, who are just working and working and working really long hours and putting so much effort into their life, yet they're missing out in other areas of life. And just uh, where you see that happen, and if you've got any thoughts on that.
I do. but before I share those thoughts, I just want to go back a little bit to the herd.
Okay.
And um, it's going to tie in. But I have been doing a lot of research, and there's a lot of research being done elsewhere as well. And so they're finding that these behaviors in horses a lot of the times happen in domestic situations
Yes.
because of resource guarding,
Mm.
right? And so if we look at horses in the wild and in their natural environment, um, typically, a herd of horses is actually self-organizing.
Yeah.
And when we look at workplaces, right, that's kind of the new buzzword in workplaces is we want self-organized. Even in the military, they're really going in a direction of, follow the commander's orders, but make your own decisions,
Yeah.
right? And
Good.
and we want to give people that opportunity to self-organize. Um, but in all of that, and a lot of what I teach is based on universal principles and the laws of nature, right?
Hmm.
And so we have the law of polarity,
Yeah.
and the law of polarity is at play in the herd. And so, when the herds are in their natural environment and one horse polarizes in a behavior, another horse will come and polarize in the opposite behavior to bring balance to the herd.
Hmm.
And if a horse is polarizing too much for too long, that horse will be asked to leave and
Yeah.
go find another band. And I think that really ties into the workplace as well. And I think that a lot of times we're fear driven,
Mm.
right? Because from a biological perspective, if you aren't good enough, when we used to live in tribes, if you're not good enough, you get excommunicated from the herd, right? And
Mm.
so we work, 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 work because it's all fear driven because it's like, well, I got to get to the next promotion. I got to do this. I got to do
Show.
that. Yeah. And if somebody's working harder than me, then they're going to get it and I'm not going to get it.
Mm.
And I see that a lot. And I think it's a symptom of people not understanding how to self-organize and how we all have unique gifts and talents. And when we operate within our unique gifts and talents and our intrinsic motivators, uh, effective leadership is a byproduct of that. Moving up in a company is a byproduct of that. Good performance reviews are a byproduct of that. And it's from a place of inspiration, not from a place of fear.
Mm.
And so when we are passionate and we're working from inspiration and we have challenges that arise, um, our body actually responds to those challenges with a different chemical cocktail. And I don't know if you're familiar with eustress, right?
Yes.
But
Stress and new stress. Yes. Mm.
stress, right? And so I think sometimes, and I can speak from my personal experience, and now I run two companies, so I'm not an employee anymore. But sometimes I work so much because I'm so inspired, it's not always feeling like work, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't spent any time with my family or oh my gosh, I haven't talked to my friends. So sometimes I think you can get wrapped up in inspiration.
Mm.
And I think it takes a lot longer to get to burnout because you're not in distress, you're in eustress.
Yeah.
But if you're working to beat your peers and get that next promotion, and if you're afraid you're not going to move up, then the whole time you're in distress, and
Distress.
that
Yeah.
often ends in illness.
Mm.
And then it's like you work so hard and your body doesn't get what it needs, and at some point your body is going to shut you down,
Mm.
and then you're going to lose everything that you're
Been
working
working
towards.
towards. Yeah.
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 And so I have this whole thing with work-life balance. I have a charge on it because uh because I don't know anybody that's ever achieved it. Do you?
No, and it is about that. For me, it's about that awareness of where you are at any given point and going, okay, what do I need to support myself? So for me, it's about that self-awareness. If you're doing a project and you know you've got to put lots of hours into it, then do that. Yet then reflect afterwards and go, well, how can I support myself to be the healthiest I can be to move forward to wherever else you're going? So yeah, it's that self-awareness, I think, rather than and I think, the work-life balance has come about because people just are on that treadmill and they're running, 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 running. And when you are an employee, often you're in that distress mode, just running to jump through to keep going. And we block out so much.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. And it is fear driven, and
yeah.
it's we've created a system here where we help people discover, who they are, what their natural traits are, what their tendencies are, and we try to help them build a life around that. So I've actually developed this sheet that I give people who complete the program, and it has all of the 7 areas on it, and it's a daily tracker. And so I like to look at, instead of trying to balance our life, empowering our 7 areas of life.
Mm,
And so I look at every task that I do every
nice. So
day.
this is looking at that self-awareness and looking at
Absolutely.
it on a sheet. I love this. Keep going.
Yeah, for me, I don't work for, well, I do in the military 1 week in a month, but I work for myself. And so I've created a life that I feel is fully supportive of who I am intrinsically. So, what I teach here, it's my spirituality, it's my mental, because I'm developing all these lessons and curriculum all the time. It's my vocation. I get paid to do it. Uh, Basically, if you want to be my friend, you have to be involved in my organization somehow. But I love all of the people around. So my coworkers are my friends, and the volunteers that serve at the farm are my friends. My husband and I run all of this together, and my kids help out sometimes too. And when I'm with the horses, or like this evening when I was putting in fence posts with my husband, I'm getting my physical activity. So when I look at my tracker, I try to write down everything I do in a day, and I look at how many areas of my life is this one task hitting. And I try to maximize my schedule by hitting as many of the areas as possible
Fantastic.
on, and it's just helped me. I feel like it's really helped me have a lot of vitality.
Yeah.
I'm filling my days now with high priority actions. So when those low priority distractions do come in, I can say, you know what, I'd love to be able to do that, but I've got these high priority things. And it's helped me contain my energy. And I think, and I know it's different for people when you have a job, or, you're an employee of a company somewhere, but I think it's important to not just be looking at where we're going in the next week or the next month or the next year, but what's your legacy? What are you going to do
Mm,
with your whole life? If you could wave the magic wand, where would you be? And how many of the actions that you're taking in a day are actually serving the bigger picture? Because it's so easy to get inundated. And I worked human resources, and I worked admin customer service at times, in my life. And it's like you have a plan of what you're going to get done for the day. And then a customer comes in, or the phone rings, or the
yeah.
boss needs something. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not, and that's, I think, where the panic comes in. And I've also realized in the consulting that I've done with companies and the consulting I've done in the military is that whenever I go into an office, I always ask for the strategic plan.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there is no strategic plan,
Mm,
number one,
yeah.
or there is a strategic plan and it got written and it got put on the shelf and no one has looked at it since the day it got written. If you fail to plan, plan to fail.
Yes.
And so nobody has taken the time to have foresight or forethought about everybody's skills, where they're best suited, and how they're going to handle challenges. And
Mm,
so every day people are just grasping at straws and trying to get a breath of
Mm,
air and move the company forward. And that's how you lose people because if you're, a good employee, chances are you're going to have a low level of tolerance for this type of stuff.
yeah,
So the good employees are like, "Oh, I'm out of here. I'm not, I have too much value for this." And then the ones that are stuck in that fight or flight mode, those are the ones that tend to stay. And then you end up with a whole office of people that are just living in panic mode and grief and shame and fear. Those are some of the lowest vibrating emotions. And so I'm sure you've walked into a room or a company or a business where you've immediately, like it's palpable, right?
yes, absolutely.
Or you walk into a company where you're like, I don't want to leave. Like I feel energized just by being in here. And,
Mm,
you know, walking into a company and having those feelings, they probably have taken a lot of time to figure out where their people belong and put them in alignment, right?
yeah.
Because when we walk into an aligned space, it just feels,
And community, so they prepared the plan and they're communicating that plan.
yeah, and they're checking in with the plan and they're supporting the plan. And, we
Yeah,
all have to modify our strategic plans,
of
but
course.
we sit down quarterly and review ours at least.
Hmm.
But we also try to look at it every day. And when you can have the plan or at least the highlights posted somewhere,
Yes.
and then you can have the worksheet,
Yeah.
how many, okay, what are the highest priority actions I can take today to hit as many of these areas as I can? Since I've really started putting this stuff into practice, I've been getting everything I've ever wanted.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
it's so inspiring.
Mm.
And I share that to share that I feel like the shift was when I really got clarity. It was like I was like, well, maybe I want to do this and maybe I want to do that. And, maybe I want to retire from the military and maybe I want to stay 5 more years. And I just, I wanted to do so many things and I didn't have a clear vision on how any of those things were going to get done.
Yeah.
But we kind of got out of survival mode with the nonprofit this last year and we put together a really solid strategic plan that we keep and we review. And my gosh, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna say I don't want any of this, but I feel like we
It's
need to slow
it's
down
all
a little
coming
bit.
so rapidly.
It's all
Now,
coming.
you did talk about an app.
Yes,
Do you want to share with the listeners, talk more about that app that's coming in August, I believe, in 2025?
yes. August is the goal. So as I've been facilitating with these charts, they've grown and they've actually grown to 16 pages. And so the horses just keep sharing more. I keep learning more. But what I've created is called the Equine Communication app. And it's all of these facilitative questions, and it's in an app. And so you'll be able to take your phone, pull it up. It'll have the horse's body displayed, and you can touch the different areas where the horse is communicating, and a facilitative question will pop up for you to answer so that you can get clarity and maybe move through some challenges in your life with
So
your
it's
with
the
your horse
horses
as your
sharing things about you,
yes,
and you go onto the app, and the facilitated question is about you for your learning. Nice.
yes. Yes, I'm really excited about it. I just wrote a book. I launched it in May, but it's called Healing in Harmony. And I don't know if you've ever listened to Louise Hay
Yes.
but she has You Can Heal Your Life, right?
Mm.
Which is or a lot of the illnesses that we have in the spiritual root. So my book, Healing in Harmony, has the 65 most common equine illnesses, what
Ah,
their spiritual root is, what the connection to their human is. And
yeah,
it has a facilitative question for the human and a facilitative question for the horse so that
right.
you can both heal together. And I've been testing, for years I sat on this because I was like, I don't know if the world is ready. And I really am finding people are just coming out of the woodwork. And I have a lot of case studies. I've researched this for 6 years. But what I would find is that people's horses would get injured. I would refer back to my charts and whatever was showing up in the horse was actually an emotional thing going on with the human.
Right,
And
fantastic.
when I would read that to the human, and I had this own experience myself, uh, when we would take the action to heal that within us, the horses were getting better as well.
Yeah,
And
nice.
the bond between the horse and the human was getting deeper than ever. So I think when it comes to employees or coworkers or horses or family members, I think that the best thing that we can do for anyone, ourselves first, but others as well, is just to be congruent with who we are,
Mm,
being live in alignment with who we were meant to be. That's our the greatest gift, right? And sometimes we don't do that because we feel like we owe other people or we have to take care of other people. It's like, well, I can't do this for myself because, so
yeah.
and so and so and so would have a problem or not get their needs met. But when you're a person, and sometimes we don't have boundaries, right? Because we feel like boundaries will make people mad or make people
Mm,
not like us. But I've learned, and it's been a journey for me because I'm a recovering chronic people pleaser, that when you learn who you are intimately, you accept and love who you are intimately, and you go out into the world, you can help people without even saying a word.
yeah, beautiful. Amanda, I do want to wrap up, but before I do, I would just like you to ask you, what could be a first step that someone could do? So, someone who's listening to this podcast to become more congruent with themselves, what would you recommend as a first step if they don't have a horse?
Yeah, so I actually have a questionnaire on my website. It's called Discovering Your Human Blueprint.
Mhm.
And it's just a few questions that will help you understand the things I'm talking about, your natural gifts and talents, your intrinsic drivers and motivators. So I would encourage anyone, it's free to take. It's on the website, equine-wisdom-institute.org. And it's a great place to start to learn who you are.
Fantastic. I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. It's been amazing, and I know everyone will love it.
Thank you so much, Miranda.
There it is. Isn't Amanda amazing? She has so much vitality and she speaks my language. I just totally wanted to step in and speak more. Yet when I interview someone, I like them to share their greatness. So you hear me holding back in these interviews. I hope you enjoyed it. Look for those links. Thanks for joining me on the Reins of Leadership. Remember to lead with presence and influence with trust. Subscribe for more insights and find resources at mirindasmith.podia.com.